so the next question then from your book, Forgive, Why Should I and How Can I? Why do you describe forgiveness as a test of our belief and understanding of the gospel?
Well, the forgiveness that the Bible talks about is a forgiveness that I do think has two parts to it. My dear departed friend, David Pallison, wrote a book called Good and Angry, and he does a really good job in there to explain that there's two aspects to forgiveness, that the two different verses, when you read them at first, they seem to be contradictory, but when you bring them together, they give you an approach to forgiveness that's based on the cross. It's not the merited transactional forgiveness we talked about, where you're basically paying the person back, but they grovel enough before you forgive them. And it's not the therapeutic, where you just do it for your own sake. Mark 11:25 says that Jesus says, if you're standing and you're praying and you realize you have anything against anybody, forgive them. So it doesn't say go to them or anything. He just says forgive them on the spot. And yet Luke 17, Jesus says, if a person comes and repents, you forgive them. And if they repent 7 times, you forgive them 7 times. And that seems to be saying that you don't forgive unless they repent. Now, what David Pallison says is that unless you bring the two together, you fall into one mistake or another. The one mistake is you say you forgive that person, but then you don't have to go to them and talk to them at all. It's all something you do in your heart. On the other hand, you very often people say you don't have to forgive somebody unless they come to you. And what David says is you internally forgive them first, so that you are saying, I'm going to go to them, but I'm not going to be trying to pay them back. I'm not going to be trying to make them grovel. I'm going to try to get them to see the truth out of love for them and the honor of God. So you forgive them internally first, and then you seek to open their eyes and maybe even reconcile. And so he would call it internal forgiveness and then external relational forgiveness, where you're trying to repair. And that way you have, on the one hand, you are concerned about justice because you're going to the person, you want to say, do you really see that you've done something wrong? And you're trying to get the person to change for their sake, for the sake of maybe other victims, for God's sake. But first, you've actually forgiven them already in your heart. Now, I think that ability to both forgive and to seek justice at the same time proves that you have really understood what happened on the cross. Because on the cross, Jesus Christ satisfied the justice of God, and yet at the same time procured our mercy and grace and salvation at the very same moment. So that's a long answer. Let me try to put it in a nutshell.
Well, you knocked out 3 of my questions just in that one answer, so thank you. Go ahead.
Well, in a nutshell, you both forgive and seek justice, just as on the cross, Jesus Christ both forgave and fulfilled justice.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that in the world, you either have the therapeutic approach to it, where you are just forgiving in order to help yourself, or the transactional approach, where you're really not forgiving them, but just forcing them to grovel. Or the idea that, no, I can't forgive at all. I just have to seek justice.
Right.
Only the cross that brings those together.
Yeah. Well, let's continue on that theme. Why do you say that forgiveness is granted before it's felt, at least sometimes? Because I can imagine that someone might say that view is prone to abuse, but I'm guessing you're trying to push back against a therapeutic, self-centered motivation for forgiveness.
Yes. To say forgiveness is granted before it's felt means forgiveness is a promise that you can make even when you stay angry. See, in other words, most people feel like to feel forgiving means my anger's gone away. And I'm saying you can grant forgiveness before your anger goes away if you promise to do three things. I put this in the book. I promise not, for example, to throw this up in the person's face. If I've forgiven them, I'm not going to, every time I see them, throw it up to them. Secondly, I'm not going to be throwing it up to other people, trying to draw their, trying to hurt their reputation. So I'm not going to bring it up to you. I'm not going to keep bringing it up to other people, the thing you did. And I'm not going to keep bringing it up to myself. I'm not going to be constantly thinking about it. Now, that doesn't mean I won't remember it, but then I'm not going to dwell on it. And I found that if I say, for example, if I want to forgive my wife, or if she wants to forgive me for something we just did, then we don't throw it up in the other person's face a week later or 2 weeks later. Yeah. We certainly don't talk to other people about it, and we don't dwell on it ourselves. And if I do that, if I grant forgiveness, then eventually I find that I feel forgiving. But if you wait to feel forgiving before you grant forgiveness, you may never feel forgiveness.